Greetings, Android development class. This is your professor, Jeff Dunker, coming at you for Module 5. We're dealing with motion layout animations, and this deals with chapters 42 and 43 of your text. So definitely want to read chapter 42 before attempting the exercise on 43. This chapter 43, which is titled An Android Motion Layout Editor Tutorial, this is the basis, the foundation for your lab this week. So you definitely want to follow the directions and go through this, but I'll demo the steps with you so you can see how it can get done in case you get stuck. So let's do that by opening up Android Studio, selecting New Project. So under New Project, what we need to do from page 341 of the instructions is select Empty Activity. And under here, we're going to be entitling this project Motion Layout Demo. And package name is com.ebookfrenzy.motionlayoutdemo. And your save location, wherever it is on your computer, is fine. Just remember to zip up your project file at the end to submit to Brightspace. We're using Java as the language always, and our API is 26, Android Studio 8 API. So it'll run on 90.7% of devices out there in the world. Click on Finish, and away we go to do our coding. Just a little background, we're going to be changing from constraint layout after this project gets built, and we'll be moving to a motion layout type for your animation, your transitions that we'll be doing today. So under resources, you'll see we have our standard activity main XML file, which we'll be editing today. And from the steps on page 341, the first thing we want to do is select constraint layout from our tree, right click, and convert to motion layout. So we click convert here, and it gives us a whole new editor screen to make adjustments to our code with. And you'll see things like motion layout, all encompassing, and then your start transition to your final transition. So basically your start of your animation to the end. And you'll be working with different elements in here. But first things first, we always get rid of the default text view that gets generated with any project. So we're just going to select it from the component tree, the text view hello world, and hit the delete key to get rid of it like so. So the next thing we need to do is make sure that we clicked on motion layout here, and we want to select the button, because we're going to be adding a button to our application that will animate and have it transition to the bottom of the page. But right now, we'll just leave it at the top left corner. And see how I use the grid lines to snap to the top left. The first thing we need to do is rename our ID for our button. And it's supposed to be called My Button. So go ahead and change that up. And you'll see, after you hit enter, you'll have to refactor the code. And then that brings up the My Button under your component tree. So when let's pause for a second. What I want to do is give you a little view of what was changed for this code. Under an XML folder under resources, you have a new file that was generated called activity main scene. So this is going to show the transitions, the animations in an XML format, how things are going to go. So basically right now it's kind of empty, doesn't have a lot of detail, but we do see this thing called duration equals 1000. That's how many milliseconds this will take. So it's basically, it'll be 1 second. So once we click on activity main, double click back on it, we can do more of our editing. So we can go forward and go over here to your motion layout. basically we need to click on your start item, and you see that you have something called My Button down here. That's your button at the top left, and we have to set constraints on it as they want you to do on page 344. So page 344 says, okay, set up our top constraint to be 8 and our left and right constraints to be 0. So center the button for us. Now that's the first one we had to do. Now this is our start position for the button. We can click on end to show where our animation is going to end, and that we now need to set the constraints for that at the bottom of page 344. So basically this one is going to be 8, and we're going to keep it centered again, so we'll have both of these being 0. So those are our constraints. So you see how it's going to end up, where it's going to end up on the page of your screen. So that's the next step. And if we look at the activity main XML, or main scene XML, you'll see it's more populated now after we put all those constraints in. You can see, okay, our start position, we have a constraint 8 DPs from the top, and our bottom constraint for the end is 8 from the bottom. And you still have the 1,000 seconds for the transition, or 1,000 milliseconds. So that was our next step, and took us through page 345. So now what we need to do is go under our activity main, and in this area here for transitions, we want to click on that transition arrow. And this brings up a whole new way to see how the animation is going to look. So without even having to rebuild or build your application, what we can do is, drag the arrow through the animation from 0 to 100%, 0 to 1.0. So it goes back and forth. You can do that. You can also tell it to go both ways, for an animation to see how it would look. So you can see with the play button how it's going to go back and forth. So on the middle of page 346, we still have to tell it how to start the animation, and we're going to be using something called the on-click event. And how to do that is we have to use the click handler to manage that. It's predefined code, so we don't have to write it from scratch. And how to do that, we select the transition arrow, and from there we need to create an on-click event. And so if we go to these transition modifiers over here, we can add an attribute. And the attribute we are going to create is, we're going to say, okay, the target ID. And we can just select it, app, target ID as such. And what we want to animate is my button. So all I had to do is drop down to the object that I created, my button, and boom, that fills in that need. And now we have one more attribute to set, and this is called toggle, and it's a click action. So we have to enter click action here. All right. App click action, and then we're going to use the transition of toggle instead of jump to end. There's a lot of different options, but we'll do toggle, so it'll go back and forth. So that's what you needed to do to create your animation. And if we look at our activity main scene, you'll see that's populated in our XML code now too. So you have your on click, and it already coded that for us. with, the ID of my button is the item that's going to be animated, and the animation type is type toggle. So with that, we can actually try compiling our code. So I'm gonna use a Pixel 2 API 26 because we're writing our code for 26, and then I'm just going to click run to build it. And in a couple seconds, it should start building. It says Gradle build running, and it pulls up the emulator for me. And then eventually, after it installs, we should be able to power up the Android and have it run. There we go. So if we click power, there we go. Motion layout demo. If I click the button now, because we set up that handler, it animated to the bottom of the screen. What if I click now again? It'll go back up to the top. So that was pretty simple, not too hard. But that was just our first step, because we're going to add some lateral motion to this as well, so it'll be a little wavy, going back and forth to make it a little pizzazz. So let's go ahead and do that. So first we should probably remove the emulator, just hide it. So I'll just click up here in the top right corner, hide. So that'll give me more development screen to work with. And the first thing we're going to do, go back to our activity main XML file. And we're going to be working in this area over here. So we want to create some keyframes, positions on our screen where we want transitions to happen. So in order to do that, we click this button here, create keyframes. And the keyframe we're going to be selecting is key attribute. And from there, what we're doing is setting up details for my button, and we're going to have the position at 50%, and the attribute we're going to be setting is rotation. So we're going to do a rotation first, and we'll be clicking add, and so that adds that particular attribute at the 50% mark to do the rotation with. Right now, if we look over in the attributes area, you're going to see it currently is limited to 45 degrees of rotation. The book exercise wants us to pop that to 360 degrees rotation. So then I can just hit enter and it'll adjust that. Just make sure that still works. Yeah, it looks cool. All right. So if we refer back to our main scene, activity main scene XML, we can see that the code here has gotten adjusted. We changed the 45 degrees to 360, so now our rotation is set to 360 in the XML, as it needs to be. So let's just compile and run that again. See how that looks live. All right. And let's run. Cool. We got rotation. Very nice. So let's go on to the next steps. So let's turn to page 350 and get back into our activity main XML file. I'm going to hide my emulator once again so we can do more adjustments. 43.7, we're changing custom attributes. We're going to be changing color of this button, and the button color will change as it progresses through the animation. So in order to do this, we have to first select the start position for our button. And we want to make sure that we get things in the right order. Yeah, we need to make sure to select us, because you only can edit custom attributes at the start and end. So we have start selected. We then have to select the object, the widget you want to make transitions to. And from there, we need to go over to custom attributes. Down underneath attributes, transforms, and so forth, you have custom attributes. And you can click the plus sign, and we're going to be changing it to color. Color is a data type, believe it or not. It has 2 hex digits for red, 2 for green, and 2 for blue. So it's a set of 6 hex digits. And we need to set up these attributes. So under custom attributes, we're going to call this attribute background color, because we're going to adjust the background color of the button. Background color, and it's going to be a hex value. And the one that they're demoing at the bottom of page 350 is pound. You have to denote it with a pound in front. F8 0A1F, all capitals. Oops. Did I type this in wrong? Background color. Oh yeah, because it changed from Boolean to Boolean. So we want background color. Now it's going to be fine. So this is F8 is the red value, 0A is the green value, and 1F is the blue RGB colors. So the maximum value you can have is FF, 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 and the minimum least is 000000. Yeah, 6 zeros. So now it starts with F8 is pretty much as closest to highest you can get for red. So that's why the button turns out to be red. So with that being said, now we can pick the end result where it's going to be at the bottom of the screen. And we're going to have a custom attribute here as well. And what they want is another color, data type, and it's still background color, so we can type that in there. And what they say at the top of page 351, the color they're specifying is 33CC33. So it's going to be highly green in color, because this is the G and that's the B. So it's going to be pretty green when we click it. Yep, it's green. So now we can look at our activity main scene XML code just to confirm that it's changing that stuff. So now we can see within our start button area, it sets the attribute of background color to red, and then it does the same thing for the end with green. So that's pretty much good for our colors. And the next thing we're going to do is make a little bit of motion from left to right. And we need to set a couple key positions here to do that with. And so this is lateral motion on page 351, 43.8 section. And all you're doing here is to click, we have to make some keyframes, so we have to go back into our activity main XML. And what we're going to be doing is looking at our transition and clicking this, create keyframes. So you see I clicked on that. I'll just get back to where I was. Here. So I click that, and what I want to do is set up a key position, and we're going to set it about 25% of the page. And so basically for my button, the position, I'm going to put 25 for here, and it's going to be parent relative, and percentage of movement is going to be between 0 and 1 float. So 0.15 on the x-axis and 0.25 on the y. So if we click on add, it's going to make adjustments there. And then what we can do is look at the XML again for scene, and we'll see that that key position has been added to the start, or to the transition, excuse me, and it's key position with 0.15 and 0.25 as specified. Now we need to add a second one at position 75. So let's go back to our activity main and click on transition, key position, and this one's going to be at 75 position, 75%. And the final values they want us to use are 0.85 and 0.75. And we'll add that. So now if we just viewed that, looks pretty fancy. That's your animation. That looks good to me. What we can do next, I'll zoom out a little bit here so we can see the animation, which looks good. This is all in preview mode essentially, so we want to make sure it runs in our application on our actual phone or emulated phone. So I'll just hit replay to rebuild the code for us. And we see it's building up, and we should be able to run the emulator now with the power button and give it a shot. Colors change, nice lateral motions up and down. We completed that project. So I put a couple extra instructions for you to add an image and change button text for this particular lab to confirm your understanding of this chapter's material. So please finish up the lab before this coming Sunday, and have a great day. Have a good week. If you have any questions, reach out during the weekdays, and I can get back to you within the next 24 hours or so. All right? Have a good day.